Hey everybody, it's Mrs. Woram. Welcome back. We're going to continue our story, Flat Stanley, his original adventure. We are on chapter 4. I had you think about what would that title mean to you. And the title is The Museum Thieves. I'm going to read. Here we go. Mr. and Mrs. O.J. Dart lived in the apartment above the lamp shops. Mr. Dart was an important man, the director of the famous Museum of Art downtown in the city. Stanley Lambchop had noticed in the elevator that Mr. Dart, who was ordinarily a cheerful man, had become quite gloomy. But he had no idea what the reason was. What does the word gloomy mean to you? Seems like it would be the opposite of cheerful. And then at breakfast one morning, he heard Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop talking about Mr. Dart. "Oh, I see," said Mrs. Lambchop, reading the paper over his coffee cup. "That's still another painting has been stolen from the famous museum. It says here that Mr. O.J. Dart, the director, is at his wit's end." "Oh dear, are the police going to help?" Mrs. Lambchop asked. "It seemed not," said Mr. Lambchop. "Listen to what the chief of police told the newspaper. We suspect a gang of sneak thieves. These are the worst kind. They work by sneakery, which makes them very difficult to catch." "However, my men and I will keep trying. Meanwhile, I hope people will buy tickets for the policemen's ball, not park their cars where signs say don't." The next morning, Stanley Lambchop heard Mr. Dart talking to his wife in the elevator. "These sneak thieves work at night," Mr. Dart said. "It is very hard for our guards to stay awake when we have been on duty all day, and the famous museum is so big, we can't guard every picture at the same time. I fear it's hopeless, hopeless, hopeless." Suddenly, as if an electric light bulb had lit up in the air above his head, giving him this little shooting lines of excitement, Stanley Lambchop had an idea. He told it to Mr. Dart. What do you think Stanley's idea would be? I wonder if maybe he would go? I don't know. Maybe he would pretend to be Art? I don't know. Let's continue. "Stanley," Mr. Dart said, "if your mother will give her permission, I will put you and your plan to work this very night." Mrs. Lambchop gave her permission. "But you will have to take a long nap this afternoon," she said. "I don't want to have you up all hours unless you do so." That evening, after a long nap, Stanley went Mr. Dart to the famous museum. Mr. Dart took him into the main hall, where the biggest, most important paintings were hung. He pointed to a huge painting that showed a bearded man wearing a floppy velvet hat, playing a violin for a lady who lay on a couch. There was a half-man, half-horse person standing behind them, 3 fat children with wings that were flying above. That, Mr. Dart explained, was the most expensive painting in the world. There was an empty picture frame on the opposite wall. We shall hear more about that later on. Mr. Dart took Stanley into the office and said, "It's time for you to put on your disguise." "I already thought about that," Mr. Stanley Lambchop said, "and I brought one. My cowboy suit. It has a red bandana that I could tie around my face. Nobody will recognize me in 1,000,000 years. "No," Mr. Dart said. "You'll have to wear the disguise I have chosen." From a closet, he took a white dress with a blue sash, a a pair of shiny little pointed shoes, a wide straw hat with a blue band that matched the sash, and a wig and a stick. The wig was made of blonde hair, long, done in ringlets. The stick was curved at the top and a blue ribbon on it. In the shepherd dress disguise, Mr. Dart said, you'll be look like a painting that will belong in the main hall. We do not have cowboy pictures in the main hall. Stanley was disgusted. He could hardly speak. I will look like a girl. That's what I'll look like, he said. I wish I'd never had my idea. But he was a good sport, so he put on the disguise. Back in the hall, Mr. Dart helped Stanley climb up into the empty picture frame. Stanley was able to stay in place because Mr. Dart had cleverly put 4 small spikes in the wall, one for each hand and foot. The frame was a perfect fit against the wall. Stanley looked just like a picture, except for one thing. Mr. Dart said, the shepherd dress are supposed to look happy. They smile at their sheep and at the sky. They look fierce. You look fierce, not happy, Stanley. Do you think Stanley's going to be able to do it? Think he'll catch someone? Stanley tried hard to get a faraway look into his eyes and even smile a little bit. Mr. Dart stood back a few feet and stared at him for a moment. Well, he said, may not be art, but I know what I like. He went off to make sure that certain parts of Stanley's plan were taken care of, and Stanley was left alone. It was very dark in the main hall. A little bit of the moonlight came through the windows, and Stanley could just make out the world's most expensive painting on the opposite wall. He felt as though the bearded man with the violin and the lady on the couch and the half-horse person and the wigged children were all waiting, as he was, for something to happen. Time passed and he got tireder and tireder. Anyone would be tired this late at night, especially if he had to stand in a picture frame balancing on little spikes. Maybe they don't come, Stanley thought. Maybe the sneak thieves won't come at all. The moon went behind the cloud in the main hall of the pitch dark, and it seemed to get quieter too with the darkness. It was absolutely no sound at all. Stanley felt the hair on his back of his neck prickle beneath the golden curls of the wig. The creaking sound came right out of the middle main hall, and even as he heard it, Stanley saw in the same place a little tiny yellow glow of light. The creaking came again, and the glow got bigger. The trap door had opened in the floor, and 2 men came up through into the hall. Stanley understood everything all at once. These must be the sneaky thieves. They had a secret trapdoor entrance into the museum from outside. That is why they never have been caught. And now, tonight, we're back to steal the most expensive painting in the world. He held very still in his picture frame and listened to the sneak thieves. This is it, Max, said the first one. This is where the art robbers pull a sensational job whilst the civilized community sleeps. Right there, author, said the other man. In all these great cities, there is no one to suspect us. Ha, 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 thought Stanley Lambchop. That's what you think. How's Stanley going to catch them? The sneak thieves put their lanterns and took the world's most expensive painting off the wall. What would we do to anyone who tried to capture us, Max? The first man asked. We would kill him. What else? His friend replied. that was enough to frighten Stanley. And he was even more frightened when... Dun, 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 dun. We'll stop there. Just kidding. Luther came over and stared at him. "This sheep girl," Luther said. "I thought sheep girls were supposed to smile, Max. This one looks scared." Just in time, Stanley managed to get a faraway look in his eyes again. To smile, sort of. "You're crazy, Luther," Max said. "She is smiling. And what a pretty little thing she is, too." That made Stanley furious. He waited until the sneak thieves had turned their back to the world's most expensive painting, and he shouted in his loudest, most terrifying voice, "Please, please, Mr. Dart, the sneak thieves are here." The sneak thieves looked at each other. "Max," said the first one very quietly, "I think I heard the sheep girl yell." "I think I did too," said Max in the quivery voice. "Oh boy," yelling pictures, "we both need rest." "You'll get rest all night," shouted Mr. Dart, rushing in with the chief of police and lots of guards and policemen behind him. "You are arrested. That's what. Ha, ha, ha." The sneak thieves were too mixed up by Mr. Dart's joke and too frightened by the policemen to put up a fight. Before they knew it, they had been handcuffed and led away to jail. The next morning, in the office of the chief of police, Stanley Lambchop got a medal. The day after that, his picture was all over the newspaper. All right, friends, that concludes the chapter. Tomorrow's chapter is called Author's Good Idea. Think about what that may mean, and I'll see you later.